right now, you are never more than a few steps from water. There's a tap in your kitchen, a bottle in your fridge, a store down the street. You could probably get a drink within the next 60 seconds without even standing up. And because of that, you've probably never thought about one terrifying question. What if you didn't know where your next drink was coming from? For 300,000 years, every single one of your ancestors lived with that uncertainty. Water wasn't convenient. It wasn't guaranteed. It wasn't waiting behind a faucet. It had to be found. And if it wasn't found quickly enough, people died. You can survive weeks without food. Without water, you're usually dead within a few days. In extreme heat, it can happen much faster, which raises a fascinating question. How did ancient humans find water? No maps, no wells, no pipes, no satellites, no weather apps, just a dangerous landscape and whatever clues nature was willing to provide. Yet somehow, our ancestors crossed deserts, survived droughts, and spread across nearly every corner of the planet. The answer is one of the most impressive survival stories in human history, because ancient humans didn't simply look for water, they learned how to read the world itself. Imagine you're standing on the African savanna 70,000 years ago. The sun is beginning to fall. Your group has been walking for hours, maybe days. Children are thirsty. The older members of the group are slowing down. Everyone knows the same thing. If water isn't found soon, nothing else matters. Not food, not shelter, not tomorrow. Water comes first. And this wasn't a rare emergency. This was normal life. Ancient humans regularly traveled through regions where one wrong decision could kill an entire group. Yet they kept moving, generation after generation, because they discovered something extraordinary. The landscape leaves clues. The first clue was animals. To ancient humans, animals weren't just food. They were guides. Every animal on Earth has the same problem you do. It needs water. And that means animals are constantly revealing where water might be hiding. Birds were especially useful. Many species must drink every single day. At sunrise and sunset, they often fly directly toward water sources. Ancient hunters noticed this. A flock of birds wasn't just a flock of birds. It was information, a clue pointing somewhere beyond the horizon. Larger animals were even better. Imagine finding fresh elephant tracks. At first glance, they look like footprints, but to an experienced tracker, there's something much more valuable: a map. An adult elephant can drink more than 200 liters of water in a single day. That means elephants always know where water is. Follow enough elephant trails and eventually they'll lead you to what you need. Even insects could reveal hidden water. Bees rarely build a hive far from a reliable source. Watch where enough bees are traveling and you might discover water you would have otherwise missed. To us, these details seem small. To ancient humans, they could mean the difference between life and death. But animals were only the beginning, because the land itself was speaking too. Most people look at a landscape and see dirt, rocks, and plants. Ancient humans saw information. A valley wasn't just a valley. It was a place where water might collect. A dry riverbed wasn't truly dry. Sometimes water still flowed beneath the surface. Dig in the right place, and water would slowly seep upward from underground. Even plants revealed secrets. Certain trees can only survive if their roots reach hidden groundwater. A single patch of green vegetation surrounded by dry land could reveal an underground water source. To someone without knowledge, it looked ordinary. To someone who understood the signs, it was a giant arrow pointing toward survival. And then there were deserts, the places where finding water seems almost impossible. This is where ancient human knowledge becomes truly astonishing. In Australia, Indigenous peoples learned that some plants stored drinkable water inside their roots. To an outsider, it looked like an ordinary plant. To someone with knowledge, it was a hidden reservoir. Two people could walk across the same desert. One would see nothing. The other would see survival. Knowledge became as important as water itself. And sometimes humans found water in places so strange, they sound almost unbelievable. In parts of Australia and Africa, people located desert frogs that buried themselves underground during dry periods. These frogs stored water inside their bodies. People knew where to find them. They knew when to dig. and during severe droughts, that knowledge could save lives. Even morning dew became a resource. Before sunrise, moisture collects on plants and grass. Some groups gathered that moisture using cloth, animal skins, or absorbent materials. It wasn't much, but sometimes survival comes down to very small amounts of water. One more day, one more journey, one more chance to find a better source. But here's the most impressive part of all. Ancient humans weren't surviving because each individual was a genius. They survived because knowledge survived. Today, if you discover something important, you write it down, you save it on your phone, you upload it to the internet. Ancient humans had none of those things. Everything existed inside human memory. The location of hidden springs, seasonal water holes, underground rivers, safe travel routes, all of it lived inside people's minds. And if that knowledge disappeared, people could die. Some cultures became astonishingly good at preserving information. Among Indigenous Australians, routes across vast deserts were remembered through stories and songs. Anthropologists call them songlines, but they were much more than stories. They were living maps, maps that could guide someone across hundreds of miles of harsh terrain, maps that included precious water sources hidden throughout the landscape. Imagine memorizing enough information to cross an entire desert without a compass, without a map, and without written instructions. People actually did it for thousands of years. And here's what makes this even more remarkable. Some ancient routes were so effective that modern roads later followed similar paths. Long before highways existed, humans had already discovered the safest and most reliable ways to move across difficult landscapes. The knowledge worked. That's why it survived. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson hidden inside this story. Ancient humans weren't stronger than us. They weren't faster. They weren't smarter in the way we usually think about intelligence. What they were was observant, exceptionally observant. They noticed details most people ignore. A change in bird behavior, a patch of unusual vegetation, a line of tracks crossing the ground, a distant cloud formation, tiny clues that could reveal something enormous. Water. In many ways, they treated nature like a giant puzzle. Every animal, every plant, every valley, every season, every movement in the landscape contained information, and the people who learned how to read that information survived. The people who didn't often disappeared from history. Tonight, you'll probably pour yourself a glass of water without thinking about it. You won't have to follow elephant tracks. You won't have to read bird migrations. You won't have to memorize hidden springs across hundreds of miles of wilderness. But every sip is connected to a story far older than civilization itself, because somewhere in your family tree, thousands of generations ago, someone looked at a dry and unforgiving landscape and found water where nobody else could. Then they survived long enough to have children, and those children survived too, again and again. For hundreds of thousands of years. You are the result of every single one of them getting it right, and that may be one of the most impressive achievements in human history.